What's crack-a-lackin' fellow home dogs, it's your boy Channel Pup, and today I have a confession to make. I don't even understand why this should be a confession. It's not a big deal. Everything on the internet's a big deal though, so that's why I'm doing this, but I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I am a huge fan of Family Guy. In fact, it's one of my favorite shows. While there are good and bad episodes, there was never really that drop-off point for me where I was like, it's not gonna get any better, is it? A lot of people have said that they dropped off at around the season 10 mark, but I've never had a problem where it's been like a whole season-wide problem. And one thing I've noticed is the internet really doesn't like this show, man. So I'm gonna be counting down the top 10 best and top 10 worst Family Guy episodes, but it's gonna be a two-parter, because there's a lot to talk about here. So this video is gonna be the top 10 worst, and the next one after this, or the next part of this, is going to be the top 10 best. Begin with the bad and end on a high note. That's my way of doing it. Hi, so I just quickly want to preface this video by saying that there are times in this video where I might refer to a certain order of Family Guy episodes in sequence. This might not be accurate because I know that the episodes released in a different order in the UK. So if anything I say is incorrect regarding the order of the episodes, that's why. And of course, I shouldn't have to say this, but I do, because people will get mad at me in the comment section below. This is just my silly personal opinion. It does not exist to validate you, it's just there for entertainment. So if you do disagree, the best thing to do is let me know your thoughts, and not be a big pissy pants about it. So for the 10th worst Family Guy episode, we have Trump Guy. So full disclosure, I'm not pro-Trump or anything like that. I kind of feel the need to kind of just stay in my lane when it comes to US politics, because I am a British guy, we're not much better with Boris Johnson, but I can tell that there is a lot that is ripe for satire when it comes to the current US government. But this just ain't it. Family Guy really went for the easiest jokes they possibly could with this one. Trump has small hands, he looks like a frog colored in orange crayon with a wig on. God, Obama was so much better, he's got sexual abuse allegations. There's really just not enough here. The episode is entertaining enough though, and I did enjoy the Peter v. Trump chicken fight and the kind of note that they ended it on. The whole thing that there's a difference between a fat buffoon being a funny TV character and a fat buffoon being the President of the United States. Like, one you can kind of escape and just watch whenever you want to, the other is a very bad part of your reality. Like, yeah, that I get what they were going for there. It's just the road they took to get to that point was just, you know, it's very tit for tat. In 9th place, we have Seahorse Seashell Party, and this episode really rubbed viewers up the wrong way. So for starters, this episode was part of a network-mandated crossover called The Hurricane, and it is probably the lamest excuse for a crossover I have ever heard of. So you got Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, and American Dad, and all three of those shows have a hurricane tearing through their hometowns. And then it ends with like a 10-second cameo at the end of American Dad. And we were supposed to get excited about that? As for the episode itself, the main bone of contention among fans seems to be the message it has. Now, I for one kind of think Family Guy's whole shtick is not having messages. Like, you shouldn't draw any kind of moral away from this show. It's not all about teachable moments, but this episode seems to be really doing its best to make it look like it's having a teachable moment that it really kind of insists itself upon. So the whole premise is that Meg finally snaps from all of the abuse she's endured over the run of the show, and finally says how she truly feels. It's pretty easy to root for Meg in this episode, but it must be said, most of this episode is just bickering with minimal jokes, and it's just kind of hard to get through. And then because she's finally spoken her mind and the family can't abuse her anymore, they start eating each other, where she realizes that she has to be the butt of all of the abuse in order for the family to get along. I get the whole thing is that Family Guy isn't really about messages, but what was kind of the point of this one? And then the rest of the episode is just the Family Guy characters trying to find ways to kill time, and like, it doesn't sound entertaining, and the truth is it's not entertaining. We've got Peter Griffin just humming to himself for like 2 minutes. The bright spark of this episode is that Brian decides to try mushrooms to pass the time and calm himself down, and the trip he goes on is pretty interesting. They got pretty creative with it, and I like to see Family Guy think outside the box. And the 8th worst episode is Herpy the Love Sore. So earlier in this season, Brian died, and then he came back, and just a couple of episodes later, we celebrate that by having him give Stewie herpes. It's one of those episodes that relies solely on shock value and gritty visuals, and it's not funny enough to really justify it. And the 7th worst episode, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, we've got Stewie is Enciente.
I think I really butchered that. What do you guys think? Basically, it's a love story as old as time. A relationship failing, growing more distant, the girlfriend decides for a last-ditch effort she's gonna try for a baby behind the boyfriend's back, in hopes it'll draw them back together again. Yeah, that's a thing that happens a surprising amount in the real world. Some people, man, they're just loco. Well, how about we do that with Brian and Stewie? What? They really had to reach for this idea, didn't they? So yeah, Brian and Stewie are becoming a bit more distant, and Stewie misses his best pal, so he impregnates himself with Brian's child using like a machine, and they have Stewie-Brian babies. I don't think I really need to go into detail about why this one just doesn't work. It just, again, rides off of shock value, and it's not a whole lot of fun. It's another one of those episodes where Family Guy's just making an observation for the sake of making an observation, and just going as far as they can with it, but there's just not enough there in the first place. And the sixth worst episode is Send in Stewie, Please. This was one of Family Guy's event episodes, and to be fair, they usually get event episodes right. This one, not so much. This was supposed to really shock the status quo of Family Guy, as they'd be doing an episode with just two characters in it once again like we did with Brian and Stewie that really explores Stewie as a character. It's this big character study with themes of mental health, and it's gonna be this amazing deep dive. The outcome? I was just bored by it. This episode was pretentious as fuck. And it's made worse by the fact that Family Guy can do character study episodes. They've proven it with pretty much every Stewie and Brian episode ever made. But in this episode, we have a very lengthy build-up and breakdown of Stewie's character as we know him. We begin with Stewie being the devious little sociopath he is towards his therapist, to then breaking him down to a guy that literally puts on his British accent as a front. The whole Stewie Griffin persona is a front. And we have these big revelations about Stewie as a character before just pushing the reset button and Stewie just snaps straight back to normal. What a fucking waste of time. We've also got some gross out humor in this one where we've got Stewie singing while crying and he's got snot all over his face. And I think whenever Family Guy actually shows like snot, I just think, guys, you're above this, you know? Then again, vomit doesn't bug me. I guess it depends how it's done, how gratuitous it is. Vomit in Family Guy always look like oatmeal, but this here looks like snot. And the fifth worst episode is Christmas is Coming. This was one of those episodes where I just wondered what the fuck I was watching the entire time. So Meg takes Stewie to meet Santa Claus, and she sits on Santa's lap, and his knee gives her her first orgasm. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this subject here, but I'm pretty sure that's not Meg's first orgasm. There's been a lot that's been implied. Moving swiftly on, just talking about this episode is uncomfortable, let alone watching it. Meg basically goes to every different mall Santa she possibly can in hopes of getting another orgasm. And when she finally finds the right one, she tries to sexually harass him. Now, we've had plenty of stories about Meg being a hormonal teen, but this one feels definitely like the flattest one. Going all out for shock value. It's like, ha 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 ha, she had an orgasm on Santa's lap. Very fucking funny. We're around the halfway point now. Now, before we go on, I just want to say, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video. Every little helps. There are also links in the description below to where you can come and connect with me and see other content, and also Patreon and a join button for if you're feeling extra supportive and extra generous. So the fourth worst episode is Hot Shots. We got another political Family Guy episode where I actually agree with what the episode is trying to say, but it's like, why am I taking a lesson in morality from Family Guy? So basically, Stewie is set to get his vaccinations, but Lois questions what's inside these vaccinations and opts to not get him vaccinated, which leads to a big public health crisis, after Lois and Peter campaign against vaccinations. Now, Peter is a dysfunctional cartoon father, but I don't like to think he's this much of a fucking psychopath. And as for Lois, who is typically more of a voice of reason in the family, this just is, what the fuck? And the thing is, I agree with its message that anti-vaxxers are fucking idiots, but like, it's another one of those Family Guy episodes that rests solely on an observation and going, ha 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 ha, look at that observation. A Family Guy cutaway gag about anti-vaxxers would have been enough. And for those of you at home, vaccinate your fucking children. What the fuck is wrong with you? In third place, we have HTT Pete. In this episode, Peter Griffin is put in charge of social media for the Pawtucket Brewery, and he needs to lead a millennial outreach program program. Now, there's a lot of fun that you could have here with how corporations really misunderstand how to reach out to younger audiences. The whole thing of brands desperately using memes to kind of pander to a millennial demographic. But the thing is, this episode ends up guilty of all of that. It ends up being just kind of, oh hey look, it's that guy from that meme. Oh hey look, it's Keyboard Cat. You're not already fucking sick of him, are ya? So while it's trying to pander to millennials in that regard, at the same time, this episode plays out like a 20-minute long boomer humor comic. There are some satirical bits that are quite funny, like the parody of hipster music and the whole hipster business stuff, everything having the word artisanal in front of it. But then like the rest of the jokes boil down to, oh, young people are on their phones all the time. They'd eat each other if they didn't have the internet. They just let their parents deal with everything. I know that there's a lot of stereotyping in Family Guy's humor, but this was, again, just too easy. Family Guy is at its best when its satire comes from an informed place, and this just isn't it. If I wanted to hear cringy jokes about how phone bad, old day's good, I'd look at my mum's Facebook page. Thanks, but no thanks. And the second worst Family Guy episode is Fresh Air. This episode takes the whole shock value thing and just decides to play it out for the entirety of the episode. We've had incest jokes in Family Guy before, and they've been kept to just jokes or cutaways, but this episode decides to drag it to the entire runtime. So Peter finds out that Chris is the heir to Carter Pewterschmidt's entire fortune. Wanting a piece of the pie, he drives Chris down south in a bid to marry him. There's not enough jokes, the episode isn't fun enough, and it's just shit. So, for the dishonorable/honorable mentions, we're gonna start off with You Can't Handle the Booth, which is vastly considered to be the worst episode ever. The episode has the Family Guy characters all in a recording booth doing a commentary to a completely made-up Family Guy episode, and I honestly had fun with this one. Most people found it boring, but I enjoyed it, so I don't get what the fuss is about. Underrated. And for a dishonorable mention, we're gonna go with Yacht Rocky. Now, this is an episode that, for the most part, is fine. What's there of it? The Griffins go on a cruise, and the cruise liner sinks, and it's just this kind of fight for survival. But then you've got this cliffhanger, where the Griffins are sinking into the water, and they're going to die, and it just cuts them at home and says, oh, by the way, we made it. With the show seemingly making a joke about its runtime. Now, this would be a fairly funny little offshoot if we hadn't already had double-length Family Guy episodes in the past. And this was kind of the epitome of this trend that Family Guy had been doing for a little while, where they would rush an ending deliberately to make a joke about how short the show's runtime is, and how ultimately Family Guy is inconsequential. But the thing is, in its best days, Family Guy did have a sense of continuity. It did have a sense of wrapping up the loose ends. So this really isn't parodying anything, nor is it clever, it's just lazy. I really hope Family Guy never does anything like that again. And for what is in my opinion the worst Family Guy episode of all time, we have Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. So this episode followed Seahorse Seashell Party, where the show that's always kind of gone out of its way to not be preachy and full of messages became a bit preachy and full of messages. But in the case of Seahorse Seashell Party, it felt like they were doing like a reverse message kind of thing, like you want to take the opposite of this home. In this case, I don't know what they were trying. So Quagmire's sister and her abusive boyfriend are in town, and Quagmire has had enough. Seems well-intentioned enough. This isn't really an animated comedy's territory, but at the same time, Family Guy have had jokes about domestic abuse before, so it's kind of interesting that they now take a serious stance on the subject. There is, of course, a right and wrong way of doing it, and boy does this episode ever get it so wrong, as a big part of this episode's message basically comes down to victim blaming. Quagmire reads his sister this heartfelt speech about how he loves her, but how if she stays with this abusive guy, she is no longer a real woman. And it's supposed to be this big emotional moment. It's not played up for laughs, there's nothing funny about this, but the message is so wrong. If Family Guy doesn't bring the laughs, that is one thing. But if Family Guy tries to do something more important, and then blunders it up on this level, that is a very big deal. Which is why Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q, is by far the worst episode Family Guy has ever put out. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Comment below and discuss. And once again, people, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and in the description below are different links you might be interested in, as well as links to the Patreon and a join button for if you are feeling extra generous, but of course, that is a big ask. I'll be returning to Family Guy once again for the top 10 best episodes, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.